Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry for the delay. We're trying to get some things figured out for a second. It is March 7th. It is the 2023 March 7th meeting of the Gallatin City Council. It is 6:04 p.m. and we're going to call this meeting to order. We'll begin the meeting as we do each meeting with the invocation, the Pledge of Allegiance. This evening, Councilman Hayes will be leading us in the pledge, and Councilman Carter is going to offer our invocation. If you would stand with me, please.
May we bow. Dear Lord, we ask that you would just come into this place and touch hearts, Lord. We ask that you would help us to be on one accord for the betterment of Gallatin, and that you would help us to see you in all things that we do. In your name we ask and we pray it all. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Kittrell, if you would call the roll for us, please.
Vice Mayor Love,
Here.
Councilman Carter,
Present.
Councilman Fan,
Here.
Councilman Fennell,
Here.
Councilwoman George,
Here.
Councilman Hayes, and Councilman Juvance.
Present.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Council, you have before you the minutes from the February 7th, 2023 Gallatin City Council meeting.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilwoman George, second by Councilman Hayes. Any additions or corrections? Ms. Love.
On page 10, I don't know how this happened, but it said we adjourned because Councilman Hayes made a motion and then Councilman Hayes seconded.
Oops.
I know he does double duty and lots of work.
He can't second his own motion, so. Ms. Kittrell, can you look back at your notes and correct that accordingly? All right, I think that's probably the best way to fix that. Anyone else? Okay, with the correction that Ms. Kittrell will make, all in favor of approving the February 7th, 2023 meetings, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are unanimously approved. We will move now to public recognition on agenda-related items. This is the time of the meeting that you can speak to any item that is on the agenda. There's also a period of time at the end of the meeting that you can speak to items that aren't on the agenda. Also want to remind you that there are two public hearings this evening. The first public hearing is on the master development, the amendment to the preliminary master development plan for Goodview Commons. And then the second one is on the amended preliminary master development plan and revised final master development plan for Enid Hills Phase 3. If you'd like to speak to one of those items, you may wish to wait and do so under the public hearing. At this time, let me say first, when you come forward, we ask that you state your name and your address. We give you 5 minutes to speak. I do set the timer. And just ask everyone to please be respectful. That means no applause, no laughter, and please pay attention to the people who are speaking. When there's a lot of noise in the audience, it's very confusing to all of us. So we would appreciate your cooperation with that. But at this time, public hearing on agenda-related items is now open, and you may come forward if you would like to speak.
City Council members, my name is David Johnson. I live at 169 Drivers Lane. Well, you have no doubt heard from my wife while I've been silent on this matter. I felt now would be my turn to have my voice heard. You've listened to my wife tell you that there are shortages throughout Sumner County School District, and I feel like it is laid on deaf ears. Currently, Sumner County Schools is having a hard time filling special education positions on top of behavioral positions on top of classroom positions. We also cannot forget that most are lacking in cafeteria workers and janitors too. The shortage of bus drivers is also a need that needs to be picked up awfully early at street corners, spending ample time on the bus for schools that have no room. I can promise that they are still struggling. On the Tennessee Department of Education website, most of the nearby schools are below a 3 on their report card in achievements. If you don't know what a 3 means, that means you're on track. Most of them are below it. Well, you have been invited to walk the adjoining properties on the Laurelwood project. Most of you haven't come out. You've been invited to come and walk the adjoining property to see the impact that this development will have direct effect on, and yet all but one has even responded. So I want to say thank you to Mr. Carter for coming out to to do that for us. We still have no answers on the fact that there will be no privacy or easements from the current plans from our property. And who's going to keep the people from going on our property and preventing them from future lawsuits? No matter what I do, it's never enough for law enforcement to enforce laid out law. There have been multiple times where we have photographic evidence of trespassers, yet it was never good enough. What else am I supposed to do other than stand on my property line and call every time somebody steps over until somebody does something about it? Please take into consideration that we do own the property surrounded by this development, and many times we have called about children on our property because it's something new and adventurous or space for them to explore outside the trailer parks, or a random hunter who is just checking his trail cams that he has illegally placed on our land, who shoots up the power line easement at the deer on other people's property, or random drug users who go out there and shoot up. We do not even walk our property alone or without any protection anymore. My hands are tied at what I can do economically and afford, and legally I'm supposed to do. The signs don't work, they get stolen, the paint wears off, or the people don't know what the purple paint means. The trail cameras that we have set up, they're never good enough. They're never good enough pictures, yet stores with blurs get looked into. Other than putting a 10-foot high privacy fence, I've exhausted all other options. We're working at fencing our property because that's what we were told the next step is, but our markers and fence posts keep getting constantly stolen by the adjoining properties. This is also expensive for a middle-class family to do. The police tell us that the infraction is small, it isn't worth the headache, or they are handling more severe crimes. It isn't so small when somebody winds up hurt or I end up in a lawsuit. I'm disappointed that someone can come into our city from another state and what it seems like manipulate the system and get his way. It's very uneasy to think that I'm raising a child in this city that is growing up faster than the city that I previously left. I left a city that grew 98% since 2000. Not only has it grown in population, but it's grown in crime. It is now the number 3 in the world for crime. While I love my hometown, I feel like I finally found a place where I could raise my son and be safe growing up in. Now, not so much. I come from the 3rd largest growing city in the nation, only behind Highland, Texas, and Jackson, Tennessee. With irresponsible growth, it leads to an increase in crime. Our emergency departments are already strained the way it is. While it seems like I'm rambling on, we ask you to not delay the inevitability, but consider other options for this project. I do think it's great to grow, but I feel like as a city, we're losing our identity. We're becoming the city of townhomes and apartments, but not a place where the middle class can live. Stop building townhomes, apartments, and million-dollar houses. The middle class needs a place to live and raise their families. What our city needs is residential housing where middle class can afford. Townhomes are not the answer. An average newer townhome costs $2,000 to rent a month. That is almost double my mortgage. To buy, you're looking at about $300,000. This was done at nearby comps. This is not affordable. You worry about the teacher shortage. A new starting teacher wouldn't be able to come into our city and live in one of the townhomes. I feel like this development has already been approved for before it even came to the city council. We're constantly told that it's a lost cause and not to waste our time. When we were approached by the developer telling us that there was a possibility that this would be happening, everything was hush hush. Come to find out, friends of the developer would be greatly benefiting from this plan via first option to purchase land. We asked to buy the property, and we were laughed at. And now they're doing us wrong by building it all up on our property. Where
Thank
it's
you,
my
Mr.
easement.
Johnson.
I've got 2 paragraphs, please. This is my last chance to speak.
No. Let's, anyone,
all right with me. Waive the rules. Someone needs to make a motion.
somebody needs to make a motion.
Yeah, motion to,
Motion to waive the rules and let him
Yes,
extend
ma'am.
his time.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You may conclude.
Thank you. Come to find out, friends of the developer will be greatly benefiting from this plan via first option to purchase land. When we were asked to buy the property, and we were laughed at, and now they're doing us wrong by building up all on our property. Where is my easement and the one to make the transition smoother for us? I didn't get the opportunity, nor did my adjacent neighbor. While we know anybody is allowed to sell to whomever they want, we find it very odd the same person who was friends with city council members. We do feel that those 2 city council members should not be allowed to vote due to the conflict of interest. If they are allowed to vote, I hope they strongly consider the city as their position is meant to serve and not their friends. You have heard from multiple members of this community saying that this needs to be looked at and changes need to be made. We have voiced our concerns over flooding. How many of you went out there during the recent storms? We didn't have much rain, yet our property and the property by the so-called creek, which is more like a ditch, still has sitting water. What will be done about the drainage? I do thank the public utilities for reaching out to the sewer problems. I still do not think the sewer is ready to handle this influx of amount, even if they do come to fix the problem. What about the traffic? I know it was said that traffic between residential and townhomes would be small, but if you think mathematically, this does not even seem to make sense. You have 4 living quarters to 1. Please consider the fact that we are not asking you to move a mountain, but to stand up for our city. Please consider the fact that it takes multiple calls for police to respond for them, or to know if it's to send city or sheriff department since it's right on the county and city line. Fire to get there in a timely manner, and EMS to correctly find the address or to even have an available ambulance nearby. Also think of the strain of the growth it's creating on our local hospitals. We hope that you will actually consider the voices of the people who voted for you to either come into office or continue to serve as our elected officials. Please consider all options when making this vote, as I do feel that this is a wrong way to utilize this property. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is David Klein. I live at 398 Branham Mill Road. Mayor Brown and council, thank you for allowing us to speak. I'm a county commissioner, District 6. I live in unincorporated county of Sumner. I'm also vice chair of the planning commission, chair of general ops. I'm on the budget committee, and I'm on the legislative committee. But the most important thing I am is a citizen of Sumner County. I am here to ask you to reconsider the annexation, your item 9, resolution number R2302-13, and I'm going to try to explain why. When I escaped from Southern California in 1998, I did cartwheels all the way to Tennessee. I knew I'd found my new life and the countryside and the people that I knew I was going to love. 25 years later, what I left, the pit I left, seems to be following me. I've been going through Plan Gallatin, the fact that the city wants to go from 35 square miles to 46 in the next 20 years is staggering and a bit appalling. The annexation of the Lock 4 property at Peach Valley, I realize is just a small part of that. But I want you to know that I think you're on the wrong side of things. I would take any of you to my hometown, my home area in Southern California, and explain to you why the GNRC and what they're proposing for this city, this county, this Middle Tennessee area is not a good thing. Not all growth is good. Not all growth is progress. I think we have real problems with infrastructure in this area. As a county commissioner, I know that to be true. We have water issues. We have road issues. Our infrastructure is not keeping up with the growth. And to add another plus or minus 900 homes, if that's what's going to happen on that 230 acres, is a huge mistake. I'm wanting to appeal to you as the people who speak for the citizens of the city. When I swore my oath 6 months ago or so, my final statement was perform the duties of the office of County Commissioner representing the 6th District of Sumner County, Tennessee. I had at least 650 conversations with constituents. I never met one who said, we need more growth, we need more traffic, we need our property taxes to go up. I think we need to take a breather. We've got lots of things that we can do in the county, lots of things that we can do in the city. just improving the look of South Water Street would be a huge benefit. Could we go after a grant for redevelopment district of that street? I know that part of the Plan Gallatin is to annex all of Odom's Bend, my district, all the way to Bledsoe Creek. I'm not against growth, but I'm against the kind of growth that we're seeing that's not paying for itself and that's going to cost us more and more. The apartments that continue to be built are the ghettos in the next 20 years. Hate to tell you, I've experienced it firsthand. I'm almost 65 years old. I lived in Southern California for 40 years. That's the truth. If you don't believe me, take a trip to California and take a look at it. I had, and still have, great hopes to work with this city council as a commissioner. But I have to tell you that my loyalty, first and foremost, is to my district and the rest of the county. The people do not want what you folks are approving. And as long as we're on those opposite sides, I'm sorry, I'm going to be fighting you the entire way. Thank you for letting me speak.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Todd Alexander. I live at 217 Strange Circle. And if I can have 15 seconds off agenda, entire Strange Circles was without power this weekend, both houses. And I just want to throw some kudos to Gallatin Electric. Those employees did an amazing job Friday and Saturday. And everyone that I've seen, I've pulled over and personally thanked. So whoever they sit under, throw them some more kudos on my behalf. I've been to multiple meetings. I have heard many times city councilmen sitting here tonight talk about how important it is that we must watch our zoning changes. We ended up with a situation in Griffin Park North, and the comments were, we've got to get ahead of this when it comes time for rezoning requests. And in the next agenda item that night, turned around and approved a zoning request for Lorraine Park. And I sat there and went, we just had a conversation about watching our rezoning, and we are going to now rezone this area from R10 and some R15 to the MRO, and we know what the plan is. And it's unbelievable to me. We've heard the neighbors talk about there's adjoining property, that this whole project does not involve all of the property there. And, you know, just experience tells me that if we make that MRO for this project, the adjoining property will be MRO one day. And if we don't do exactly what you the council said we got to get ahead of this and slow the rezoning down, we're going to end up with another situation there. Also on your agenda tonight is the request for annexation of the banks of Lock 4. 876 units on 295 acres. And as I look at the proposal, it looks like there's a lot of green space, and there is. There's 133 acres of green space. And looking at it, I see a lot of it's got creeks and some cemetery and some low areas that we know if they could build on it, the developers probably would. It's a better investment. But they can get 876 units on there, and they're advertising it, I suppose correctly, that says that's 3 units per acre. But when you take away all that space that is unbuildable, what that really leaves is 876 units on 162 acres. And what that development is going to feel like is 5.5 units per acre. It's going to feel crammed. It's going to feel tight. It's going to feel very, very, very populated in that area. And I don't even want to mention the traffic again down Lock 4. We've beat that horse to death. I don't know what else we can say. I thought it was interesting a couple weeks ago after the meeting that TDOT was dropping car counters on Lock 4 Road. So I'm interested to see the latest traffic counts that were there. I also did them down Nichols Lane. I sat in these meetings and I've been told that as citizens, we're misinformed, that we're uninformed, and that we simply don't understand. We're told that you can't stop development. I want you to know I'm not against all development. I am all for natural growth that comes, not this huge, massive development on steroids, if you will. I oppose character map changes that residents don't want. And can I tell you, Council and Mayor, I love to see the day when we come here and dream together as a city council and citizens without having another master development plan on the agenda. I would love to see that day. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Glenn Custard. I'm at 115 Tatnall Court, Gallatin. I'm a local contractor in the area, and I'm here to voice my support for the Laurelwood Park development. I think it's a nice opportunity to have something on the different end of town. Everything seems to be growing on the other side of town, the Nashville side of town. We haven't really had much development in that area, just a few things. I think this would be a nice development. Some of the guys that I hire often say that there's no place for the local guys to buy land to do things, and I think this is an opportunity that maybe we can have some of our local guys get involved in building out there. So, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lina Marler. I live at 1512 Cherokee Road. So I wanted to speak tonight, and I don't do this a lot, so I'm kind of nervous, and I thought of all the relevant points to discuss, which are real issues about the banks of Block 4. Traffic, EMS, schools, all huge issues. But I want to talk about something else. My dad, William Pereira, was one of the smartest people I've ever known. He was a historian, an artist, and a businessman. Most of all, he loved this county. He painted historical structures before they disappeared or were changed forever. He painted the beautiful landscapes that surround us in his favorite place where we went on Sunday picnics as a kid, Bledsoe Creek, a place that he and the generations in his family before him enjoyed, a place with historical significance. He was born here in 1933. He lived here his whole life except for 2 years in the Korean conflict and then a brief period in Nashville. Until he made the decision to move back when I was 2. He wanted us to grow up in the country on our family farm in this beautiful place that he often called paradise. He commuted for 30 years to a CPA firm in Nashville to give us this option. I tell you all this because I grew up in this beautiful town, and I called it home my whole childhood. It was a small town, and you knew almost everyone. We had campouts, we rode horses, we went fishing. My best friend today was in my kindergarten class in a tiny house in Gallatin. Pretty amazing. Well, of course, I understand things have to change, and areas grow. I lived away for several years, and I moved back upon my husband's retirement from the United States Navy. We lived in Pennsylvania and Illinois. We did not like it in the Northeast, so we were both so excited to come back to the town we grew up in. This was in 2012. I resumed my career selling real estate. I worked with a team with a national presence and had several clients from California and many different states. I was at that point exclusively a buyer's agent. So it's funny when I hear about all these people that supposedly, according to developers, want these small lots. Everyone I worked with, and I sold millions over the last 20 years, they wanted space. They wanted a yard, they wanted acreage in this beautiful area. They loved Gallatin, they wanted a square. It was very appealing to them. So fast forward 13 years. I see those people today, and they all tell me how much we've lost. We're losing something my dad often talked about. I heard him say it, and I never really thought about it. We're losing a sense of place. We are becoming, with all the high-density development, exactly what my clients were moving away from. I was driving in on 386 about a week or so ago, and I came over the flyway, whatever it's called, right before Pilot Knob. And all of a sudden, I was just shocked at what lay before me. It was just buildings, neighborhoods, apartments as far as the eye can see. The lack of green space was alarming. So I have to ask all of you, and several that I know up here that are native to Sumner County, why? You can truly leave an area rural zoning and not high density. You have the choice. You have, it's not too late to take a breath and slow things down. To preserve the sense of place we still have, please don't allow developers and planners and people hired by our city to change who we are. If you don't, we become those places people left, and they're still fleeing. I close by telling you one last story about my dad. He was asked a few days before he passed away, almost 2 weeks ago, what the most beautiful place was he had ever traveled to. He thought for a long moment. The person that asked him told me she was sure he would say England, Switzerland, or the place he most loved to paint in the Southwest, Arizona. He replied with Bledsoe Creek. Please consider what we're losing. We're losing that paradise my dad loved for almost 90 years. We're at a tipping point, and I ask you all to please vote no on annexing this land. Thank you.
My name is Mary Janung. I live at 1100 Lock 4 Road, and I'm here about item number 9. I'm asking you to vote no on annexation. I'm kind of tired. I've been coming here quite a bit, and I'd really like for you to hear what I have to say. I've really thought hard about this. I see people on Facebook and people belittling the citizens about how they feel about this, talking about them, calling them, telling the county to stay out of the business of the city. I'm here because I'm a concerned citizen. I live on Lock 4 Road. I've raised my family there. And I just want to cry. It's like I can't get you to hear me. You can't hear the citizens. I talked to a man on Peach Valley, an older man. He was like 80 years old, and his wife is buried out here by 109. And he said, what are they doing over there? What are they going to do? And he lives in a little house over there, and he said, I don't know what they're going to do. And I explained to him what the annexation was going to do, the plat that they had showed. And I said, when you come out of your little driveway and you look across, all you're going to see are townhouses right there. You're going to see townhouses on 1/8 of an acre. That's all you're going to see. He goes, what about that going down in there? You're going to have to fill it with dirt. I said, no, they're not going to build to that. They're going to all that's going to be townhouses. And the man was mortified. He's lived out all those years. And he said, this is bad. Who's doing this? I said, developers, the owner wants to sell, and the city. I said, so I don't know what to tell you. I've fought, and I've fought, and I have fought. And I've heard these stories from these homeowners and the people that lived here all these years, and I'm just asking you to vote no. I'm not asking you for any other reason other than what is right for the citizens around this whole area. These are our homes. And I'm just saying, please vote no. Thanks.
Anyone else wishing to speak under public recognition?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shirley Camp, and I live at 118 Wayne Street. In 2019, Gallatin was voted by Reader's Digest as one of the 10 nicest places to live in America. It said Gallatin was a triumph of trust, respect, and the spirit of community, where they have each other's back. And in the middle of it, we have the mayor, and we have Pastor Derek Jackson, and Chief Bandy. But now we're being smothered by townhouses and traffic. As I've been here at meetings or watched on TV, many residents have asked for this town to take a break from adding more unattractive townhouses and traffic. But as one woman expressed as I walked my neighborhood talking about the Laurelwood project, which is at the end of Lorraine and Wayne, and another street, she said, these politicians, they're going to do what they want, and with that, she closed the door in my face. And I think she's correct. You all are hearing, but you're not listening. Why would we want to walk on a new sidewalk if the traffic smothers you and the trash will? If the traffic doesn't smother you, the trash will, or you will fall over a can or bottle. I wondered if Reader's Digest would say we are the nicest place now. And if you can't take care of a little, what makes you think you can take care of more? Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak this evening under public recognition on agenda? Mr. Camp.
Good evening. My name's Steve Camp. I live at 118 Wayne Street. I'm here to speak about Laurelwood. I've spoken to every one of you at least once on the phone. I'm just going to reiterate, because most of you have made up your mind, just reiterate a lot of stuff I've heard tonight. One thing I just heard, Mary Gallatin is also our county representative in that area, so she does have a right to come up here. We do have a right to contact her and speak. The man lived on Strange Street. He made some good points about that out there. This property is basically 26 acres that they're going to annex, plus or minus. They're going to develop approximately half of it because the other half cannot be developed personally. But our planning commission likes to compare apple to oranges. They say, well, they can get 50-something lots there. Well, they can get 50-something lots, but they can't build on 50-something lots. The land is at distress. They give them a variance to bring these condos or townhomes a little bit closer together because they can't build on this other land, and this gives them a couple more units. That's scattered talk that you bring around and just downgrading the public. Had our city planner get up here with the nice little red pointer that he bragged on that when he got it, pointing out the trailer park. The trailer park does not adjoin this property. It has no effect to this property. So I figured out when we was in planning, talking to planning, these bid units down there are approximately 9 units per acre. That's dense. That's dense. The other land sitting there lifted. There's also been some stuff. There's one person that lives in the neighborhood has let it be known that she's good friends with 2 county council rooms up here. They're going to do what she wants to do. They're friends with the developer. And so they're basically not doing anything because they're coming out smelling like a rose out of this whole deal. This land is going to end up, if they put the gate up, all they got to do, these roads go over to the other thing, all they got to do is extend Wayne Street out and hook on the backside. And that's in the future plans. So, but it's just, we need to slow it down. Everybody says they want to slow it down, but nobody's trying to slow it down. It's causes Tennessee and Gallatin. I remember, Mayor, when we rebranded our city, one of the biggest things, I got Craig and some of us on here, one of the biggest complaints that come out, very first thing was, we got to get good old boy politics is in Gallatin. And everybody on this council, when I was on the council at that time, we all throw the fit. But good old boy politics is still alive and well, very bad in Gallatin. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Elisa McDole. I live at 1031 East Nichols Circle. I've been a resident of Gallatin for 68 years. We moved here when I was 2 years old, and I've never wanted to leave. I keep hearing that the property proposed for annexation in our cities is our city's only rural area. And my question is, what's wrong with that? Why can't we preserve one rural area in our city, in our county? Being rural also means that it preserves trees, wildlife habitat, clear, clean air. I don't understand why we have to fill our cities with clusters of houses, townhomes, and apartments. We hear we need affordable housing, but I don't see any rental amounts decreasing. My grandchildren cannot afford to get an apartment in the city of Gallatin, and they both have good jobs. We're piling houses and apartments on top of each other. I tried really hard to travel through Gallatin in my mind and count apartment complexes or townhome type rentals. I got a rough count of 23, but I know I've missed some because they're everywhere. They aren't all large complexes, but the newer ones are, and some are huge. I shake my head sometimes when I look at those. To find one less than $1,200 a month, you have to live in an old one in a scary part of town. And I mean old apartment buildings. Between living, commuting, childcare, and housing costs, our grandchildren can't step out into a good, safe rental location in the city of Gallatin. Building will not help that because developers don't care if we have affordable housing. They care about making a fortune. If they had our community in mind, they'd be happy to build a maximum of 2 houses an acre on the beautiful farm on Lot 4. The objectivity of our city officials and our planning department should be above reproach. It should never create the appearance of promoting, advocating a developer's proposal over the community surrounding a possible project. The desire for growth of the city limits should always come in second to the existing residents in the community, those people who have supported this community, some of them their entire life. In Article 6, residential district regulations, general purposes of residential districts, section 6.01.040 says, to protect residential areas against undue congestion as far as possible by regulating the density of population, the intensity of activity, the bulk of building in relation to the surrounding land and to one another. That's our article for the city of Gallatin. Gallatin doesn't need to change the character of the property currently discussed for annexation, nor does it need to annex it. The developer purchased it. They should be willing to build it in the county as they purchased it. I've heard comments from our council persons that the Patterson Farm folks who bought houses across from the new coffee and hamburger joint should have done their due diligence. But what I think is that our city should have zoned the property side by side to protect the homes of the subdivision they approved. Please protect your constituents and not our out-of-state, out-of-town developers who are here today and gone tomorrow when the mess is made and can't be corrected. We teach our kids to just say no to things that are not good for them. Please say no. This is not good for our city. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak under public recognition on agenda-related items? Seeing no one, public recognition on agenda-related items is closed. We will move now to mayor's comments. I just have a couple of things to share. First, I appreciated Mr. Alexander sharing his appreciation for the Gallatin Department of Electricity, but I'd like to expand on that and certainly thank our Public Works Department, our Police Department, our Fire Department, our Gallatin Public Utilities Department, and yes, our Gallatin Department of Electricity. And I know even within other areas of our city, a lot of people have jumped in and helped. We had some terrible storms. We had neighbors and community that lost lives. I think that gives a good perspective for those who suffered property damage. But I'm so very, very grateful for our departments and our folks who sacrificed pretty much their weekend so they could get people restored and safe and healthy. And I want those employees to know that they are appreciated, certainly by this mayor and this council. But I would also say that I think they are broadly appreciated by the entire community. And many people have, whoops, not timing myself, that was from the last one. But many people have reached out and shared that with them, and I appreciate that because we have so many dedicated folks who do a great job for the city and our citizens, and that bears mentioning. Just a couple of events. Gallatin Shamrock Run is happening this Saturday at 7:15 right here in downtown Gallatin. Always a fun run benefiting the Education Foundation for the Chamber that provides scholarships, or not scholarships, but provides grants for teachers in Gallatin. The Sumner County Irish Festival is also this weekend. It's from 10 until 4 at Bledsoe's Fort Historical Park. My favorite event of the year, Spring Forward, Daylight Savings Time, happens that evening. And a reminder to this council that the TML conference is coming up next week in downtown Nashville, and Steve Fann's birthday is on the 11th. So that is all the mayor's comments, and I'm going to move along now to the regular agenda. And the first item on the regular agenda is public hearing on ordinance 02302-17, and Councilman Juvance is recognized for that.
An ordinance of the City of Gallatin, Sumner County, Tennessee, approving an amendment to the preliminary master development plan for Goodview Commons, FKA Maddox Commercial Park, on a portion of 3.16-acre lot located west of Greenlee Boulevard and south of 386, authorizing the revision to be indicated on the official zoning atlas, repealing conflicting ordinance, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. This is a public hearing.
The public hearing, if you would like to speak to ordinance 02302-17, you may come forward at this time. Okay, seeing no one, I will declare public hearing on ordinance 02302-17 closed. Item number 2 is public hearing on ordinance 02302-18. Vice Mayor Love.
This is an ordinance of the City of Gallatin, Sumner County, Tennessee, approving an amended preliminary master development plan and revised final master development plan for Enoch Hills Phase 3 on a 30.88 plus or minus acre parcel located north of Hartsville Pike and west of Woodlands Drive, authorizing the revision to be indicated on the official zoning atlas, repealing conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. This is a public hearing.
Okay, public hearing on ordinance 02302-18 is open. You may come forward and speak if you would like to. Mr. Binkley.
Good evening. I'm Mike Binkley, and I live at 236 Timber Lane. I've lived here in Gallatin since 1952. I moved here when I was a year old. I've lived there on Timber Lane for 38 years. I'm very blessed to have a beautiful place in the city of Gallatin with 22 acres. This is my favorite TV show to watch on Tuesday nights. There's nothing on as good as the council meeting. And I was watching a couple of weeks ago, and the city planner, Mr. McCord, he took his pointer and he described my property to the north as a large uninhabited piece of property. So I want to make it clear to the city, it's not uninhabited. I've lived there for 38 years. It's my home. I'm concerned with the 25-foot buffer that's supposed to be in place when they develop that section of the Enoch property. I want to make sure that the buffer is really protected. I go out Cairo Road off of 25. On the left-hand side, the Harsh property, they have cleared every tree on that piece of property, on the border there on Cairo Road. Once those trees are gone, you cannot put them back. You go out St. Blaise Road across from Paul Kurd Sr.'s property, they've cleared every tree along the road. I don't want to come home one day and there be a bulldozer pushing trees on my property line. So I want to make sure the city understands that I want it to be protected. So I do have concerns about that. I'm concerned about the drainage. That's a very steep piece of property. I don't know if any of y'all have ever walked across that property, the Enoch property, but I mean, it's steep. The water's going to have to go somewhere. It's going to come over on my property. I know there's supposed to be detention ponds and retention ponds and things to control that. I just want to make sure they do. Those are my main concerns. I have no intentions of developing my property at any time in the next 25 years if I live that much longer. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Binkley.
My name's Alex Mertz. I live at, I'm the last house on the right on Enoch Drive. Couple concerns I have is my wife and I, we have a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a newborn on the way next month. Our kids play in this, not in the street, but in the front yard. Being that we are already the last house, the amount of cars that come up there and at high speeds is pretty alarming. Not to mention the amount of dumping that goes on at the top of the hill, concrete, basically everything they use for construction on building the entire development has been dumped back in that area despite us calling in a lot of the times. It doesn't really get answered. And then to touch on what was previously said was the drainage. That's a big concern of ours. When we bought the property, a couple of the neighbors had told us that there were drainage issues in the first place and that it was supposed to be handled by the developer. It has not been handled, and every time it rains a little bit, our entire backyard turns into a flood, turns into a river, and the future development of that does concern us about the draining, but as well as, you know, are they planning on putting in multiple entries, or what's the situation with that? Because also on Enoch Drive, my wife and I have almost been hit numerous amount of times just from the one intersection. People blowing through the stop signs, not paying attention to it. And with the further development of it, it's only going to increase traffic. And that brings some very high concerns to not just myself, my wife, and a lot of the neighbors that we've spoke to before tonight. So I just wanted to address that, say thank you.
Mr. Burks, would you say I don't know if I didn't hear your address. I was right.
158.
158. And which road is it?
Enoch.
Okay.
It's the last house on the right. It's going to be the
On
main
Enoch.
portion of the amount of, as they begin doing that third phase 3, it's going to be probably the main entranceway to any of the construction. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak on this public hearing?
Yeah, my name's Nathan Henry, 329 Hathaway Lane. Same thing with the water issues. The water's still going through the yard right now. You go in the backyard, you step in. I've redone my land multiple times because the runoff is really bad. I've rerouted and put water pipes under the ground to move the water around the side of the house. You come by my house right now and I guarantee you there's still water coming off the hill. So to his point, every single yard, my neighbor next door to me, Mike, marshland, mosquitoes. It's terrible, terrible water. I don't know if it's coming up from underneath the ground, but from where it rained just this past weekend, it's still coming out over there. So I just want to add to the support of that, just making sure that we have proper drainage off the land over there. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak under this public hearing? For the two speakers who did have specific questions about the plan, I would urge you to follow up with planning, give them a call, and they can probably tell you where to locate the various plans, especially with the road connections and the like. And our stormwater department, Lance happens to be here this evening, is that man right there. He can help you with that. But we will certainly made a couple of notes to follow up on, but if you want specifics about the plan, our planning department will be happy to help you and provide you with any information you'd like to see between now and the vote. Okay, I'll declare public hearing on ordinance 02302-18 closed. Moving on now to second reading on ordinance 02212-71, and Councilwoman George.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance of the City of Gallatin. This is an ordinance of the City of Gallatin, Sumner County, Tennessee, rezoning 23.28 plus or minus acres from the R15 medium-density residential district to the MRO, multiple residential and office district, and 2.2 acres plus or minus from the R10 medium-density residential district to the MRO, multiple residential and office district with a preliminary master development plan for Laurelwood Park located south of Drivers Lane and east of Lorraine Drive, authorizing the revision to be indicated on the official zoning atlas, repealing conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. I so move.
I have a motion by Councilwoman George.
Second.
Second by Councilman Hayes. Open the floor for discussion or vote.
Yes, ma'am.
Recognize.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to start by saying I'm against that development, and I'm going to explain why after, but you guys know me. When something is good, I say it's good. Something is bad, I say it's bad. And we had plenty of good comments. And again, I appreciate to see more and more people looking at what we do here. It's great. But I heard a comment tonight. I have to disagree. And I want to straight that up. It's about the crime here. The first thing I did when I got appointed at that seat, I met with Chief Bandy. And without asking anything, Chief Bandy was really prepared because he got used to see me there for 4 years. So he already knew the question I was going to ask him. And I got the statistic on crime. Chief Bandy gave me that, and I have to disagree. We actually, our PD do a fantastic job on crime compared to what we have. So I have to disagree with that citizen comment that we are the first bad city on crime. I don't agree with that. So I have to straight that up. Now, to go back to that development, I didn't walk the property, but I drove around it. And when I look at I pulled the map, the zoning map today, and that's what it is. So if I look around where that property is going to be built, it's R10, R15, R20, agricultural. I remember our planner, when we were talking about Harris Land, telling us that creating a checkerboard pattern for zoning was not good. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to create a checkerboard pattern by putting MRO zoning in the middle of 15, R10, agricultural, and R20. And, you know, I try to keep myself with what's going on. I don't know all the zoning ordinance and all that stuff, so I read it. And the zoning ordinance for the MU district, because MRO is a mixed-use district, and say they are designed to promote and protect the health, safety, morals, convenience, order, prosperity, and other aspects of the general welfare. We have the specific purpose and intent, and there is 5 or 6 different paragraphs. One say that mixed use are here to ensure residential livability for permanent residential activities in a mixed use area, to protect adjacent residential areas, and to provide a harmonious and supportive relationship with all other adjoining uses. That's not what's happening here. That's not what's happening. I don't think that project fit there. And, you know, we heard all the residents, we had a lot of people coming here saying it's not right to be there, and I agree with them. I don't think that development is right. There is a right development to put there. It's not townhouses. So I will be voting no.
Else wish to speak?
Yeah, as, you know, and as I stated before, the only way that I would vote for this is if we just had the one entrance off Driver's Lane, and I don't know if we need to put an emergency exit or entrance off of Lorraine, but that would be the only way that I would vote for this, if we did that.
And I agreed, and I don't believe it fits the neighborhood or the surrounding area.
I feel compelled to say, I mean, a couple things. When you put the gates in, as we've discussed before, it creates that lack of connectivity that we know helps our transportation network. So I don't understand that, because remember, if I say something wrong, y'all correct me, but I think I recall that the developer can build the single-family homes and put all the traffic on into the existing neighborhood, or they can build the townhomes and put the traffic onto driver's lane. Coincidentally, this was, oh man, I can't think of the name, over by Windsong. Remember all the people that didn't want the connectivity in that neighborhood? The connectivity has not been made yet, but guess what? Engineering's getting calls about when that's going to happen because they want that connectivity. Because as that corridor grows, because remember, that is a freight corridor, and that's where that comes out, the people in the existing neighborhood are really going to be struggling to be able to get out of there to the left. And so having it connect to driver's lane does create a good solution. And I was thinking about what Mr. Juvent said about it doesn't fit in this neighborhood, and I can remember probably 30 years ago, I lived in a townhome development right in the center of a single-family home development in Hendersonville. And that townhome is still a very, very nice townhome. I'm also very perplexed because people keep talking about needing affordable housing, and economics, to a large degree, is going to dictate what is affordable housing. And as long as we have a shortage of housing, which happens because so many people are moving here from other states, our prices are still going to be unattainable for so many of our young workers and young families. You probably heard me say before, my nephew's living in Westmoreland because he couldn't find a home here that his family could afford. And so affordability doesn't just happen because a developer wants to do something nice, because as long as there's high demand, the prices are high, construction costs are high, and therefore the housing is high. And I believe that the influx of townhomes has happened because of two things. One, there actually is a market of people who want townhomes, depending on where they are at a stage in life or what kind of lifestyle they want to live, and affordability, because that is what's affordable as a starter home these days. People, to some degree, I think, act like that's a new thing, and I kind of thought it was too, but then I think about 30 years ago when I bought my first home in Hendersonville, and it was a townhome. So I don't think it's that different. I get that none of us wants change. I would love to see everything remain rural, but, and when you talked about the checkerboard pattern too, Mr. Juvent, this is about property being developed and what the future uses will be. And when it's next to a major corridor and it has the infrastructure so close, it makes the most sense for that to be developed in a denser areas. I've said all along, it doesn't make sense when it's out on the periphery of the city limits with nothing but county on the other side of it, but it's right by a major corridor and close to our core, it does make sense to develop it more density. Mr. Fan.
I'd just like to say is, most people know I ran at large, which represents all 5 districts. And I depend on the district elected officials for their opinion. When I was running, the 3 most things that I heard was, 1, they wanted more retail, more restaurants, and less apartments. One lady even made a statement, and I said, why do you want less apartments? She said, because they don't pay taxes. Now, come on. Based on what I heard, I've run 3 campaigns actually. I'm going to vote for this project because it fits in with what I heard in that district. And I think it's going to help them get better retail. It will upgrade the neighborhood, I think.
I'm just thinking out loud here. If you were to put in the gate that you were talking about happening.
Say again.
I'm addressing Mr. Hayes about the gate that he wished to put in. I mean, at some point in the future, none of those people are going to be there that live in the existing neighborhood, and there's likely going to be somebody that comes along and says, why the heck can't we connect? Think about Lakeshore,
The biggest point I've got is that Lorraine and those areas have been established for years. Let's face it, when they develop this property, if you open that up, I don't care if it's easier to go out driver's lane and go out the red light. They're going to take the shortest route out. Everybody always does. So they're going to be cutting through, and those people are going to be going that way. Lorraine is really, they're not going to be going through there to go to driver's lane and go out the red
You
light.
know where I live, and I take a longer route to get to a light.
You're one out of maybe 20.
No, I don't think so. I think your
I mean,
traffic is going
yeah,
to
I'm-
dictate what you
we-
do.
we can
And when you
disagree,
can't-
but I'm just saying
When you can't
that-
get left out of there, you're going to go to the light. And the people going to the right, they're going to use driver's lane because that's
You know, it's the
closer.
same thing with Belvedere. That's why we have that huge problem with everybody cutting through Belvedere. They think it's a shorter route to go and to go to Nichols Lane or wherever. I mean, you know, but that's just my thought. I mean, y'all don't have to
I
agree
would
with
contend,
that.
I would contend that at some point it's going to become so much traffic that's going to be impossible to get out of there. Mr. Giovanni, you're right.
Yes, ma'am. I hear there, there is no inventory in Gallatin, so we're lucky to have a property that
I'm
people.
sorry, there's no what in Gallatin?
No inventory on, there is nothing to buy. We need to build more, so we live on a property that people want to buy. So I receive regularly mailers from real estate agent. And the last one I received, it's right there, and it's about the Gallatin local market. And that was last week, Thursday, actually. Median price in Gallatin is $500,000, 502,945, with 238 active listings, 35 million days on the market, and 24 new listings the last 5 days. So I agree stuff is not affordable, but there is stuff to buy. So again, the base of the non-affordable, and I agree with you, Mayor, is the price of the land. Because the developers, and I chatted with the developer, I say, I understand where you're coming from. When you buy the land, $100,000 to $120,000 an acre, because that's what it's going right now in Gallatin, the only way they can make money is to build townhouses, because that's going to be the most for the buck. They're going to put so many that they can actually make money. And that's going to go until we start to look at the big picture and say, what's going to happen if we slow that down? If a developer knows that we may be going to say no to a rezoning, which should be good here, and he can pay $120,000 an acre, the price is going to have to go down. I got a call from.
I think that's anti-capitalism, Mr. Chubats. I mean,
I got a call from somebody on Longolo Park, okay, who got approached, because that's what they do. They go see land. Who got approached, and the developer told him he had 100 acres. I give you 100K an acres only if I can get it rezoned. So that's what's happening now. If he can get it rezoned, he's not going to buy the land.
I understand that, but what you're saying is let's damage people's land, we damage the property owners who have held on and cared for and paid for their property the longest because we're going to control the market that way. And I mean, I personally find that to be anti-capitalism and anti-free market. But I'm sorry, Mrs. George, you were waiting to be recognized?
Thank you. Number one, having two houses on a acre of land is going to be a lot more unaffordable than having townhomes on that property. We cannot, at $500 and some thousand a home is not realistic in Gallatin. It's probably more like in the 300,000 as a mean average, but at the same time, we have a need for attainable or affordable homes. And the only way we're going to do is to have more density. That's just the reality of where we are. And this project looks pretty good to me.
Build more density where it makes sense, not there.
I think, I think if you look at smart, and again, I mean, I think we'll see all of that South Water Corridor redevelop over time. And because it's an older area, and it will redevelop. And it is right there on a major corridor. It is very close to public utility. Actually, it has existing public utilities. And you've got the 109 bypass right there. So I don't know where that kind of development doesn't make sense is out towards Castaigne Springs. But, I mean, it's a very difficult circumstance to try and manage right now. I mean, I mentioned it last week. No one has ever seen the circumstances that we are experiencing in Middle Tennessee. I think one of the strangest pieces is that we have so many people who are moving here, yet they're not participating in the workforce. So what does that look like when you are trying to, staff your schools, staff your government, staff your businesses, staff? I mean, it's great for the economy because you have people coming here that can spend money, but when you don't have people to work in those businesses and in those schools and in those governments, it creates a real problem. And affordability is directly correlating to that.
Exactly.
We're running people out of here. And I know that we're talking about growth in the city. It's interesting to look at some of the county permits and how many permits they've been executing. And when you start looking at houses dotted all over the countryside, that takes up all the county's rural character. And to help meet demand, it makes the most sense to have the most density in the cities. I mean, that's where most of the revenue comes from the counties. That supports, I think, the businesses you mentioned, Mr. Fan. And I heard it said that our apartments are all going to be ghettos and that, townhomes aren't good homes and the apartments cost too much. But then you look at what is making you say those things. I mean,
People are choosing these things. They're not being left empty. They're
right. I mean, apartment costs are so high because they're full. And the costs would go down if they weren't full and nobody was investing in building more. And yes, land would go down if the market need were met. I mean, we saw it happen a decade ago.
If we stop doing what we're doing, we die. I mean, that's reality.
Like it certainly is going to create a gap, and I'm very fortunate to have a father who has a father and a grandfather who had great vision and said, this is what the future is. I can't think about what I want as a man my age. I have to think about what my grandkids want or what what they will need to have a satisfying life. And I mentioned it last week. It's always so stressful when we have a meeting full of people who are against something being built next to them, which I mean, that's natural. Nobody wants anything built next to them. Nobody comes here and says, please build Walgreens next to my house. But everything has to go somewhere. But what I do hear in the community is what a great community it is. They're so excited about the amenities that are coming. They've just moved here because they bought a townhome or they moved into an apartment or they bought, a home in Fairview. I mean, it's all different kinds of people making all kinds of different choices. And I don't think anybody sitting up here has a desire for growth. I think we did at one point because we needed those amenities to help offset our property taxes. I don't think we have a desire for growth, but I certainly, for one, have a desire for a good community where people who want to live here can live here. And it breaks my heart that there are so many people from Gallatin that can't live here anymore. And that's because there's not housing available for all sectors of the population.
We've heard people say that.
Mr. Fan?
I'm sorry.
I'd just like to say, and this is hard for me to do sometimes, we've got to look at it, are we being selfish with what we want? Or are we going to be what the future holds, what the younger generation wants? I look around this council, any of us could go at any time. So
Even don't say that.
one exception. But it's not about us anymore, it's about the future. And we've got to look at what it needs. And we may need, people go crazy when I say this, we may need a big trailer park to get labor force here, but it needs to be placed in the right place and supervised.
That reminds me of something that was said earlier about infrastructure. And while our traffic certainly has increased, I think one of the reasons that Gallatin remains so attractive for investment is because we do have good infrastructure. Water is not the challenge in Gallatin that is in other parts of the county because we're blessed to be on the Cumberland. We have our own utilities. Our electric has been planning and growing and building for years, as has our gas utility. And so there are so many communities that do not have that opportunity. And when you're in one of those communities, what you're looking at is an ever-increasing property tax burden. And here in Gallatin, we're very fortunate. We've been able to keep it low because we do have balance. I'm sorry, Councilman Carter. I'm going to quit talking right now.
Thank you. So just speaking as the only millennial on the council and the youngest person serving right now, I agree with Mr. Fan. I do think that sometimes we give our opinions in haste and it's for our own selfish desires because I am a millennial, like I stated, and I think I'm probably the only person that I know close to me and around my age that I talk to and communicate with on a regular basis that does want a single-family home with land. Most of my friends don't. They choose to live in apartments, and you know, a lot of times we hear people say people don't want to live in apartments forever. Well, we can only speak for ourselves in that regard. Some people are okay with being renters forever. Some people don't want to upkeep and maintain a yard, so they won't to live in a condo or live in a townhome.
Mr. Vanell, Ms. Love, anything y'all want to?
Well, you know, excuse me, Ms. Love.
Well, neither of you asked to be recognized. It's just the
But, you know,
discussion been among
one
us.
interesting thing that I learned over the weekend was, and I lived in the Bethpage area at the foot of Westmoreland on a farm, and I've been here for so long, 38 years in business. I've seen growth from day one. And once I built my first house, I think I was 19 years old, and I thought, well, I'm way out in the countryside. And I'll never forget Charles Haynes come right across the street from me and put in like 13, 14 houses. And it really upset me. And, you know, Charles ended up being a great friend of mine. But then I moved out further, 13 miles further out on Gallatin Road. And I remember I bought my first 100 acres out there. And I thought everything was fine. And next thing you know, where I put my house is next to a fence line. They was coming next to me on another farm and putting in a subdivision. So, you know, that kind of bothered me right there, but I bought it. And I ended up buying 4 or 5 farms around there till I got to the point I just, at the age I was in, I thought, well, I'm going to come to Gallatin and cut down on the maintenance. So my way of living and thinking really changed. Now, I know that there are areas in that part of the county because I used to represent that as a county commissioner, and there's a lot of people in that area that don't have water, and they're developing houses out there that don't have sewer or land that is lucky to perk. Now, the other day I heard, because I think I discussed it with some of you guys, I was shocked to hear that the Creasy farm sold, and they're projecting 200 to 700 houses in that area in Westmoreland. And they don't have the sewer up there for that. So they're approving that on a step system. And I think most of you in here know what a step system is, and that's not a great system, but you know, it looks like this growth is happening not only here, but it's happening everywhere. I jumped out to my son-in-law's father. We was at a cheerleading tournament over the weekend, and I asked him, I said, what about Hartsville? I know he lives there. I said, what about your countryside out there? He said, Sean, it's just they're coming up everywhere. They're dotting here and dotting there, and I see it not only in our area, but I do see it everywhere, and I hate seeing this countryside go. I really do, and I'm just wondering, is it because we got an increase in population in the United States, or is it because Biden's leaving the border open?
Inappropriate comment.
I think it's good.
Actually, I think the population is growing. There's a housing shortage from the recession that happened in the earlier 2000s. We never recovered. I think I mentioned before that it's estimated that there is a housing shortage nationwide between 2 million and 4 million units. You combine that with a mass migration of people from a few states to just a few others, and Middle Tennessee taking a whole lot of that burden, and it's really exacerbated here. So, I mean, all those things are true. And I mean,
I understand it, but I guess the litmus test out there, and I've made it aware to a bunch of you guys, and I have voted for townhouse. I voted for them in my neck of the woods, and at the time I thought that was good. But now I just feel like that we need to kind of wait a little bit, and I think we need to make sure is that really what we want. I remember Hendersonville and the old Beatty farm, my parents lived down there, and it ended up that Hendersonville's pretty much sold out of everything they had, but they really got into a squabble over down Indian Lake Road and Craig knows, he grew up down there, and I think they all went together and ended up buying that farm. I don't know who bought it, but I thought the citizens might have went together and bought that piece of land to preserve that acreage right there. And it just seems like to me that it's not going to be long before we get in that same situation. But
They did that out in Castaic Springs too, or not Castaic Springs, but outside the city limits. Mr. Brown knows, he's one of them, so.
But, you know, I don't know if it's speaking out of turn or not, but since we're talking about development, a different project, I made sure that last weekend for 4 days in a row, sometimes 3 times a day, I had to travel back to Lebanon and, well, it was the Lebanon area, back and forth to different schools. So I went through Peninsula, I went through Lock 4, I went through everything. One of our fellow ex-city councilman, Jimmy Overton, said, Sean, I just don't feel that we have much traffic down Lock 4. I do in a way believe him, but I don't think they need any more. You know, to me, it's just, I see that townhouse, I know, but I see the townhouse going down in that area, and I'm not for that, so I'll yield.
So,
Ms. Lowe?
All I can say is that I grew up on the other side of Gallatin, out in Cairo, as y'all know, on a farm and on the lake. We were forced by family members to sell, and in order to keep the land beautiful, we insisted on at least 5-acre tracts, and people were begging. People would give anything to have been able to buy some of that. I don't believe that there's so many people that don't want any land. I mean, 5 acres, I know, is too much for a lot of people. But I think that people still want a yard. People want townhouses. We've got lots of townhouses.
Mm-hmm.
We've got lots of apartments. So I would love to have more density in closer to downtown, maybe on South Water, or like somebody said, but closer into town where there's businesses now that may not be there forever, but close to the lake, close to where it's more rural. I want to keep land available for people, really, where there's already houses with yards. That's what I just feel like should stay there.
yeah, I mean, I'd like to make an amendment, I guess, that we do not allow access to Lorraine except by emergency access, because I think in the near future, I think that subdivision is stubbing off a road that will connect to, what's the road, Wayne, that will eventually maybe go through there. Yes, so,
Motion on an amendment?
yeah, that's my amendment,
Can you repeat that? Can you repeat your amendment?
if I can. Yeah, no, that we do not allow access to Lorraine from this subdivision except by emergency access.
There's a motion on an amendment. Second by Councilman Carter. Any discussion on the amendment?
Yes, ma'am, that's already being proposed a couple of years ago, and that was turned down. So how are we going to do that? That already bring body here once, and that was turned down. So that was I think that was subdivision near the new Publix. We didn't want connection and say no. So I don't.
And there again, I think the difference is that that subdivision does not have any other access, or will not in the future. This one will in the future, we hope. I know we're basing it on the future, but that's the way I'm looking at it.
Again, I heard the word "don't be selfish." I think not being selfish is listening to the citizens and again, what is wrong to keep that R15 or R10? I agree with Ms. Love, there is a market for it. People want bigger lot. We have plenty of townhouses. We have them on Harris Lane. I know the developer who's building the townhouses complex there already is acquiring the 4 property on the back end, so he's going to build more. I don't think we need townhouses there. Bigger lots who mirror what's around will be fine, and I think the neighborhood would have no issue with that. No.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Ms. Hamacali did mention to me that there probably, and I think she's right, would create a violation of the fire code because the number of
Potentially.
units.
I don't know how many units. are on there.
Well, the number of units is relevant to whether or not it requires more than one access. I think it's over 30 units, and I'm looking for Mr. Stewart to agree with me.
Where is Mr. Stewart?
Where is Mr. Stewart? Mr. Stewart? Chuck Stewart.
Wake up. Bueller?
There he appears. The conversation is about gating between this proposed development and the existing neighborhood. Ms. Hamacali mentioned to me, and I said I think that would be a violation because it's more than 30 units. Looking for your confirmation or correction.
The gating is more of a call for the fire chief than it is for the code department on emergency gating into a facility. But if you have more than 30, the code requirement is for 2 accesses. Now, there's ways to fix your accesses so that it works. We've had some developments do this, where you're coming in one spot, but the way the road's built there with the opening and circulation through the development, they can go around that. But there's several things in code I'd have to get into to do that. Just answering off the top of my head, I'd have to really get back into it. But there is a way.
Chief Beaman? But we have an existing plan that would be contradictory to any potential solutions. Crash gate qualify for fire access?
What Chuck referred to as access, depending on the number of units into a developed area, there are several options to meet the access challenge, and with the gated access as well. There are several approved methods that you can use that do meet code. It'd be a conversation, with the city and the developer to determine which would be the best solution. I could do a little more research and come up with those exact options, but there are several out there off the top of my head, but I'd have to look into it just a little bit more.
Thank you, Chief Beaman. Council, the applicants have come to the podium or near the podium. I'm guessing that's because you feel like you have something pertinent you need to add, but I guess I need this body's permission to allow that, or?
I would like to hear.
Motion to suspend the rules and allow the applicants.
Motion to suspend the rules and to allow the applicant to.
Motion by Councilwoman George, second by Councilman Carter. Any discussion on that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Thank you.
Thank you. Cal Gentry, Civil Land Company. I just wanted to speak to that specific question. I did reach out to Ben Harris in the Codes Department, and he did confirm that a gated option does meet the requirements of the newly passed ordinance, as well as having roads stubbed out for future development. And while we won't necessarily want the gate there, if that's the will of the council, we're willing to abide by the rules that you set. But we're here to answer any other questions about any of the other issues that you do have.
Change of thought of what you want to do since you've heard all the discussion? Not to put you on the spot.
No, ma'am. This is, we've looked at developing this. I think we've discussed this as single family and others. We can't make the connection to Driver's Lane without it. If we develop it as single family, all the traffic goes out Lorraine Drive and Wayne Drive. That's it. There's no other way to get out until something else happens. But if we develop this as townhomes, we can afford to connect to drivers and get to that left turn on the drivers and get to the signal there, which gives at least an alternate route out for someone. That's really the reason for the rezoning, is we need to be able to get the density to put that road in that meets the long-range transportation plan that engineering and planning have both asked us to do at our initial, even pre-app meetings. So that's the reason we're asking for the rezoning, is so that we can adhere to kind of the guidelines of the departments. So, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on amendment. It is contradictory, but I guess second on the amendment. Yeah, okay, sorry. You understand, you have questions about that? I mean, you understand that's in conflict with what we have asked and what codes has guided that.
You said it's in conflict?
The conflict on the gate.
Engineering steps forth. Mr. Wagner, you're recognized.
Good evening, council. I appreciate the opportunity to speak for a second. The engineering department does not support the gate idea. We like the connectivity. We strive to get connectivity within the city. So if this development goes forward, we would want to see this be more of a connection between Lorraine and Driver's Lane so that drivers can get out to a signalized intersection. So we put our support into not having the gate and to get out to the Driver's Lane intersection.
Okay, any further discussion on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment, which is the gate, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Abstain.
Okay, Mayor, I'm not sure.
Thank you.
You want a roll call? Okay. And this is on the amendment. Okay. Vice Mayor Love?
No.
Councilman Carter? Councilman Fan?
Yes.
Councilman Fennell?
Abstain.
Councilwoman George?
No.
Councilman Hayes?
Yes.
Councilman Juvance?
No.
3 noes, 3 yeses, and 1 abstention.
Well, I would vote no because I don't think it's consistent with all the rules that we have set forth, so. If there was some caveat where we could say it
Now
goes
we're back to the-
away a short period of time. Yeah, we're back to the original motion.
I got you.
Right.
All right.
Certainly. You know, one thought might be that you could have it for a period of time or something. I don't know. I mean, I don't really know what the all.
I think we heard from the people
I understand. Okay, so we're back on second reading on ordinance 02212-71. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say no.
No.
Abstain.
Okay, would you roll call, please, Ms. Kittrell? There was at least one vote I heard nothing from.
Vice Mayor Love?
No.
Councilman Carter? Councilman Fan?
My hearing aid battery went out. I need somebody to speak up while we're sitting here. Tell me what the motion is.
No, it's the original motion.
Original motion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Councilman Fennell?
Abstain.
Councilwoman George?
Yes.
Councilman Hayes?
No.
Councilman Juvance?
No.
Well, we have 3 noes, 3 yeses, and 1 abstention.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Mr. Fennell. Do realize that I'm the tiebreaker vote. I am not the one that hears from the residents. I've heard from maybe 2 beyond the speech that is happening here. And I made my case about so many things this evening. And I think that the right thing to do is to provide that long-term connectivity, which only comes with the multifamily development. And so I do support that and vote yes. Okay, moving on now to second reading on ordinance 02302-15. Councilman Carter, you're recognized.
Thank you,
I
Mayor.
didn't, sorry, I didn't hear. You said yes?
This is an ordinance appropriating $7,575.40 for insurance recovery from the fire suppression operations at 155 East Main Street, which is a new courthouse currently under construction on August 7, 2022. I so move.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Carter, second by Councilwoman George. Any discussion? This is second reading on ordinance 02302-15. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Passes unanimously. Item 5 is second reading on ordinance 02302-16. Councilman Hayes.
It is an ordinance appropriating $3,500 from Project Woolhawk for Planning Department office renovation expenses. Motion to approve.
Second by Councilman Hayes, second by Councilwoman Love. Any discussion? This is ordinance 02302-16. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. It is passed unanimously. Item 6 is second reading on ordinance 02302-19. Councilwoman George.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance amending Gallatin Municipal Code, Chapter 2, Article 1, Section 2.2-5, acceptance of gratuities. I so move.
Okay, motion by Councilwoman George.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Love. Is there any discussion, questions? Okay, this is second reading on ordinance 02302-19. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
Passes 6-1. Item number 7 is first reading on ordinance 02303-20. Councilman Fennell.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance appropriating $1,400,000 for construction of the City of Gallatin Police Department gun and training facility. Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Fennell, second by Councilwoman George. Any discussion? I know that we are in favor of this, but this does have a significant budgetary impact, and I don't want this council to feel like this isn't going to impact other needs. Right now, we started on our budget hearings, and we're $17 million out of balance, so trying to figure that one out.
I understand that, but we've been looking for this for 5 or
Yeah.
6 years, and I'm
I
glad to get it.
understand. I'm not going to act like it's no big deal that we're putting another 1.4, pulling 1.4 out of our.
I don't think we say it's not a big deal. I think training is the most important thing we need for our emergency department, and we need that. So.
I did not say that the firing range was not a big deal. The money is a big deal.
Yes, ma'am.
And so this is first reading on ordinance 02303-20. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Item number 8 is first reading on ordinance 02303-20. It does pass unanimously, I'm sorry. Item 8 is first reading on ordinance 02303-21. Councilwoman Love.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance amending Gallatin Municipal Code, Chapter 17, Article 2, Section 17-59, and Chapter 17, Article 3, Section 17-180, water and sewer rates. I so move.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Love, second by Councilman Hayes. Any discussion on this? Okay, this is first reading on ordinance 02303-21. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Does pass first reading unanimously. Item 9 is resolution R2302-13. Councilman Juvance is recognized.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Gallatin, Sumner County, Tennessee, authorizing the property owner and applicant to submit an application for annexation into the city of 230.34 plus or minus acres east of Lockford Road and north of Peach Valley Road. And I move to postpone indefinitely.
I'm sorry, what was?
Postpone indefinitely.
Definitely.
And
That's essentially killing it.
second.
You said, excuse me, Mr. Javance, you said to postpone and?
Indefinitely.
Indefinitely, which means
Oh.
to not give anyone an opportunity to apply for annexation.
Did somebody second?
Motion dies for lack of a second. It's
I'd like to make a motion, we defer.
Second.
a motion to defer, resolution R2302-13.
And,
Second by Councilman Fan.
well, that's what I was getting at. The reason I want to do that is because that I don't think we need to be doing this without knowing what's going to happen with the character map until it comes back. So I would like to see us wait until we decide about that before we do this.
I appreciate what you're saying, but remember this council just last week said that that character map, you were asking for it to stay as it was, but with that road, with the plan for that road, that it would be changed. So that is a bit of an inconsistency in my mind.
What?
You're saying,
I know, motion to defer. I mean, y'all heard my reason. I'm
but to
just saying.
when?
I'm just saying.
Okay, till
Yeah.
the character area comes back. Okay. Motion and a second to defer. Motion by Councilman Hayes, second by Councilman Fan. Discussion, all in favor of deferring until after we get the character area back, defined back.
I'm not talking about that. Planning Commission's bringing it back to us, correct? Are we voting on it when it comes back to us? Yes.
You have that option too.
Yes, okay, that's what I'm waiting on, till it comes back to us and we vote on it.
So till it's presented back to you.
Yes.
I thought it was them that it stayed with them. I didn't think it came back to us to vote on again.
I wish for the council, I mean, it's been my wish from the very inception that this council would also adopt it. But the planning commission actually approves it. So I'm hoping that this council, if we can get on the same page with what the expectations are, that this council would adopt
It's
it.
adopting it, not approving it. Okay.
And in this case, it would be amending if
Sorry.
any changes were made.
Councilman Hayes, but do you want to postpone or you want to defer until it's adopted or until it just comes back? We need to make
Well,
sure.
Because if,
Until it's adopted, let's say until it's adopted. All right,
remember, the council never adopted the previous plan.
correct?
But
But my
that's
thing
why it's
is-
coming back to us, right?
The
So
plan is already
we have the
adopted,
option to
so
adopt it.
Yeah, and I thought the planning was gonna discuss it and then send it back to us
yeah.
for our blessing. And we're either gonna say, okay, that character area is gonna be rural
No,
or urban.
it would be for you to, you cannot change it. This body cannot change it. The planning commission has the authority to change anything anyway. This council has its own authority to either adopt it or not to adopt
Correct,
it.
okay, yeah, there you go, all right.
So,
All right.
I personally don't think, I think it should be
It's a moot point.
until it comes back, because, say this council were to never adopt it, you kind of,
Either way, that's fine. If we wanna do it, I
I mean,
mean,
I'm just trying to make sure
know
that
you're-
there's some
you're-
provision for the people that have, trying to navigate this with our city, so.
All right,
let's say then when it comes back to us, okay?
After the planning commission
Presents back.
Yes.
adopts and presents back.
And I don't necessarily disagree with
Okay.
that, because I think that would give whomever the applicant is some guidance as to what opportunity there may be. Okay. Motion to defer, second by Councilman Fan. Any discussion on that?
So Craig, you're wanting to defer this to get the translation from the planning as to,
Basically, to see what planning's gonna do.
Ask them.
But it's still a moot point.
It's not a moot point.
And
will
we
be.
really just have a motion to defer, so.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. If you're that person, if I'm that person, and we don't adopt this plan or whatever, are you gonna annex it if it stays rural?
They may not.
They may not. So it's not a moot point.
let me ask a question. I mean, this is going into the annexation part of it. Do we have to annex this right now? I mean, there's going to be other chances to do it.
No, that is the problem that is created, and I think that's something that everyone needs to be very clear on. If a property is developed and is not annexed into the city of Gallatin, it will likely never be annexed into the city of Gallatin. And that is because the state did away with forced annexation, which I think is a good thing. And so we now can only annex on referendum, which nobody would vote for, or upon request. So that's why I've been saying that when we have the opportunity to annex, and it's right in the middle of our existing city, it's nonsensical to not to annex it. Doesn't say it should be developed one way or the other. It's
I
just-
understand what you're saying,
it's just-
Paige.
we all have seen the confusion created by these donut holes that exist within our city as far as enforcement, the trash cans sometimes. I mean, you have just service addresses that are in the middle, right in the middle of the city, that aren't a part of the city. And so it creates that kind of problem. And that's why I think having a contiguous city limits or having property contiguous within the city limits.
I understand that. I'm just concerned about that particular piece of property out there on that road right there. And I felt like once we give an inch with annexation, it feels like that it's going to go in a different direction. And I understand what you're
We still
saying.
approve it, though. We approve whatever they send or not approve. So we have the right to see what they have. It's not like,
I mean, theoretically, you,
Like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, do you remember the piece of property came up on Lot 4? Right in the middle of everything. Same thing. They came in and wanted to do a application for annexation.
that's what this is.
His plan, huh? This is the same one? Okay, all right, well, same one. But what we were talking about was that, it's right there in the middle. Is this the one that's in the middle of the donut hole? Yeah, so that's what we were talking about.
So Paige is saying that if we don't annex it now, then they could come in and start developing it as a county entity.
Yes.
Then there's an opportunity right there, and then we'd have county services trying to come in there and service that area and kind of bumping heads with us. But if they do it on a county level and start developing it, then that sounds like they're going to either do a neighborhood or do it one at a time, right? Or
No, I mean,
just don't know
they
how they
develop
will.
it how they want to develop it, but the true thing, and you know you can make this happen in the city, not necessarily, I think, smart development, but I would say it's very unlikely that within the county it would develop with more density. But it could, because we still let them have utilities.
But if I was,
But look at what it's costing the city long-term.
I understand what you're saying, but if I was the landowner and I was wanting to sell this piece of property, the property's going to bring more money if it has that annexation through the city because of the way that we underground utility sidewalks and the benefits that we.
If they're, it depends. It depends on, what developer wants and what property owner wants. I mean, people can own large parcels of property and put their own deed restrictions on it. We know people who have done that here in, Gallatin and Sumner County, where you draw lines around how you want your property to develop. If you want it to be 5 acres, that's a deed restriction. If you want it to be, with the rural zoning, you can do that. But we are going to provide the utilities to them, which do we allow them? Yeah, we allow them to access the
We've been into that before.
Yeah, I knew on the public utilities, but electric I hadn't really thought about because they have their districts drawn out. So we still would require the same of them. Our utility departments will require the same of them where they are. I don't know, what infrastructure, utility infrastructure costs might look like with the different development patterns. I don't know. I mean, but I do disagree with having donut holes out there because we've dealt with the, when the county paves their road and the city doesn't pave theirs or vice versa.
Like Dow Cage has been.
And Peach Valley used to be, but we just finally took over the part, so.
Sorry. When you annex Longolo Pike, where my property was, a donut hole was created on the back end. That was not an issue. It's always depending who lives there. But again, I draw a hard line. We cannot afford more annexation right now. You remember these were your words a couple of years ago, Mayor. I went again through that book, through the annexation study. I could go for everything again, but we cannot put more stress on our people, okay? I run a team of people during my career, and when I was short, I was releasing the load instead of increasing the load. Right now, we're trying to increase the load. Public Works, in the annexation report, service vehicles and new positions may be required to service the city, including the annexed area. Public Works job is already 8 short. So How are we going to do that? Add more people to work when we're already short. Police, we're still short. All that stuff. EMS, I send you an email coming from commissioner in charge of EMS who say EMS is stressed everywhere. We cannot afford more annexation. I understand the donator. The last time we talked about that, I run a number, and we actually gonna make more money if it's not in a city because they're still probably gonna connect to our utilities. We sell utilities more money if it's not in a city. We're gonna have less expenses, less stretch, road. And again, we talk about Log 4 Road. If that property is annexed and developed, where do you think all the construction traffic is gonna go? I never heard an answer on that. They're gonna come to Log 4 Road, okay? I see construction traffic on Longolo Park all day long. Trust me, that on Log 4 Road, that's not gonna work. That's not gonna work. So I agree with Craig. We don't know what's gonna be on the other side. For now, it's on the plan, it's rural, and if they want to develop in a county, go in a county. They could do 2 or 3 an acre. There is, again, we come back to what we said before, there is people who want that. They would have no issue selling it, and that's it.
But that's not typically what you're going to find in the core of a city. And I did not understand what you were saying about something about my words, but I think if I said something about an annexation, it often has to do with that on the periphery because I don't want to annex it.
I disagree with the call.
Let me continue speaking, please. But what we are always kind of bumped up against is if we don't annex it, then it gets developed in the city. And then the land beyond that is still in our urban growth boundary. So I think people are tending to view it in the right now thing. And what you were saying about we need X number of employees, that's if this were to be built out. This is not tomorrow because they're starting it. It's when that demand is here. And things are going to change over, I don't know, maybe it's a 20-year project or whatever. This is projecting what the needs may be.
Until Log 4 Road is put at a level we can afford that kind of traffic, that can't happen, okay? Urban growth boundary, I remember our planner wanted to reduce the urban growth boundary, and you guys voted to expand them, okay? We need to breathe, okay? We need to stop right now, take a hard look at what's going on, and just let them develop in a county if they want to.
But it just creates a long-term effect because of a short-term decision that people 100 years from now and 200 years from now would be dealing with. And that's why I have an issue with it, because I feel a responsibility to the future of Gallatin. But anyway, we have a motion to defer. You're recognized, and that's it, Mr. Fennell.
I was getting back, and really don't have no relevance, but you mentioned something about the EMS. What did you say that the EMS director said that we're in a bad situation because we don't have enough ambulances out there in the area? Was that our old director?
Yeah, that was before he went to his new job. He basically told me that we have, in Sumner County, we have 13 ambulances for 214,000 residents. The ratio is 1 for 16,000. The recommended ratio is 1 for 10,000. And the 3 ambulances we have in Gallatin are the most used in the system. They are the most busy in the system. So, I mean, when these 3 are out, they have to come from somewhere, Sandersonville, all that stuff. So
The email I actually saw was from the new commissioner that was the new chair of the Emergency Services Committee. I did not see anything from Chief Miller.
I sent 2.
I saw the thing from the chairman of the EMS committee, but I did not see
Maybe
anything
did
from
not
Chief Miller.
send it to you, but I have it. I can forward it to you if you want.
That's fine.
I feel like
I also feel like, again, I'm sorry to interrupt, but relative to what you were speaking of, That's why we have a fire department. That's why we've gotten them all EMT certified. That's why we depend on our fire department so heavily now. Ms. Love, I'm
I
sorry.
just feel like we're debating something that's not even come up. We're supposed to be
Well,
talking
I
about
understand that, but I had a
deferring.
text that come out, that with the statement that Mr. Javance made, they thought that maybe we had some danger in Sumner County because of our ambulances.
Well,
So that's why I had to ask that.
I will, in reference to that, because we've heard it from a lot of different angles tonight. If you think about it, it's really a chicken or an egg circumstance. We need employees, but we don't have housing. We need employees, we don't have housing. I mean, how are you going to fill all of these vacant positions if there's nowhere for them to live? So anyway, okay, motion to defer, we're going to vote. All in favor of deferring, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
Have one no, it is deferred 6-1. Item number 10 is Resolution R2302-26, Councilman Fan.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the resolution appointing an interim director of human resources and setting compensation rate, and I so move.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Fan, second by Councilwoman Love. Any questions, discussion? Okay, this is Resolution R2302-26. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. There weren't many yeses, but I didn't hear any noes, so I'm going to say it passes unanimously. Ms. Russell, thank you for your willingness to serve in this capacity, and I'm glad that we've made it official now. Item number 11 is Resolution R2303-27, Councilman Fan.
This is the resolution appointing Ronald Code Shepherd to the Historic District Commission, and I so move.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Fan, second by Councilwoman Love. Any discussion?
Yes, ma'am. I would like to know, I read the resume. If I was going to go to war with Cuba, that would probably be the guy I would take. But I see nothing that resume was talking about historical. So I'm wondering what qualifies him to be on the historical commission. And I would like to know how many people applied. And I have an issue with Mr. Shepherd for comments he made and for what he stands for. I know the people who have plenty of experience with Gallatin, like Dr. Weber, for example, who's a Democrat, but I can't vote for him.
That's fine. Mr. Cole lives in the Historic District. He's very involved with several of our historical properties. He also happens to walk the Historical District almost on a daily basis. And he's been at every event and has a keen, I didn't understand what you were saying about some comments he made. I can't recall him ever having been here. It is a volunteer position. People can submit board interest online, if they're interested in serving on various committees. But I was asked by the Historic Commission to consider a few people, and he was one of them, and I think he's a good choice.
He's done a lot for Rosemont, too, I can say. Lots of work there he's done.
You don't live in the Historic District, but you represent the council.
I do live in the Historic District.
Oh, you do now? That's right. Your new property is. I forgot about
He
that.
lives in the Historic
Yeah,
District.
Yeah. And yes, we have a motion and a second. Further questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
Passes 6-1. That concludes the regular agenda. It brings us now to other business. Any member of this body have other business to bring forward at this time?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Javance.
Yeah, I would like to put on the next agenda, we get a discussion on creating a social media policy for employees of the city. I got sent some comments this week made on social media from a Gallatin employee at a GSS grade, so it's not somebody who was on top. Please tell the residents of the county and Andersonville and other communities who come to Gallatin Council meetings condemning Gallatin to quit chirping in. Another one was, please tell the residents of the county and Andersonville and other communities who come to Gallatin City Council meetings condemning Gallatin to leave our concern about our town alone.
Pascal, I'm sorry, I didn't really understand.
I think he's reading comments that employees have made.
Our employees?
And he's asking that we consider a social media policy, which we have certainly discussed in the past, but it's such an infringement on free speech that we have never gone down that road.
Right. Was they bad comments, Pascal?
These were employees. I'm assuming if an employee is speaking as a citizen, they can say what they want to. That's free speech. But, I mean, if...
There's a lot of things out
if
there.
Mr. Henschel were saying it on the City of Gallatin page, that would be a different issue.
A lot of things on social media that would be inappropriate, in my opinion, but that's just the way it
Well,
is.
some of it crosses the line quite a bit.
A lot of it does.
That was crossing the line, and every company I've worked for the last 10 years had a social media policy for employees.
Private sector.
I also think too, if we're going to mention that, then as elected officials, we need to govern what we say and control what we say and not mention stuff like that is our opinion. That's what people put on there. But we need to be the model citizens of what does and does not go on social media, because I see a lot of stuff from elected officials that I don't think is appropriate. But hey,
I agree.
you say that in your personal time, and that's how you feel. I'm not going to do it, but we can't control what somebody else is going to do. And if the employees are defending the city of Gallatin, in my opinion, kudos to them.
Are we allowed to take up for ourselves, though?
Of course you are, but and then I know it's difficult when there's attacks, especially when they feel unfair. So anyway, Mr. Juvance has asked that this be added to a work session agenda. Is that something that this body is interested in?
No, ma'am.
Motion, I assume, if somebody wants to make a second.
But I mean, if we do a work session, what are we going to be, what can we really discuss to do if it's free speech?
Well, what do you want in a social media policy for government? I mean, a lot of times you do have them in governments, but they're more along the lines, who is allowed to post to the city government page, and how is it monitored, and those kinds of things that we pretty much have handled as best we can with a very limited staff handling our social media, one person. So,
And again, these employees are speaking as citizens. They're not speaking on behalf of any Gallatin office or agency. That's their opinion.
your second to have this on the work session next week. Any other business this week?
I want to make a statement. When I was speaking earlier about what the people that I asked what they wanted, I did not campaign in any apartment complexes, so it didn't come from those people. It came from existing residents.
Thank you, Mr. Fanoff, and feel sorry for people who live in apartments. I feel like there's, that it's, I don't know. But those apartments, a lot of apartments are really, really nice. I don't think they'll be I don't think they'll be
The
ghettos
point
in
I'm
20
making
years.
is, it didn't come from what we call the millennials in the apartments.
Oh, right.
It
It
came from existing residents.
Contemporaries.
Some had been here for years.
Yeah, contemporaries. I get it. I get it. Anyone else with any other business this
You
evening?
know, other people.
Mr. Devons.
Yes, ma'am. Another thing, we talk a lot about level of service, so same thing, I would like to put that so we can open a discussion on level of services for the city. Because sometimes we say we don't follow them, sometimes we use them as, so we use them or we don't, but we can say we have good level of service, and when somebody bring T-dot number, we say it's not true, we can say we don't follow level of services, so.
Are you talking traffic level of service?
Yes, ma'am.
I think, I mean, what is it? You just want to discuss level of service?
Yeah, to see if that's something we can put in place for the city, because the city is growing, and I think maybe it's time to consider it.
Body want that on the agenda?
I don't
Motion?
understand.
He wants to have a discussion about the level of service for traffic. And I know Mr. McCord has mentioned that several times. The problem is that, a lot of roads have a poor level of service at a certain point in the road. And where do you draw those lines? And truly, my opinion would be that it would not be something that this body would create. You do need a professional to tell you what is acceptable and what the goals are, So if you guys want to put on a work session, motion by Mr. Javance. Okay. I'm not opposed to that at some point in the future. I think the planning department will probably be asking for that too. So, okay.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
One of the comments that come out this meeting, I think Pascal did address that, but if I heard things right, I think one of the citizens said that we was third in the world in crime. Is that how y'all took that?
I didn't
No.
make that.
He said where he moved from is now
I think
third
he
in the
moved
world.
from the third fastest
Okay.
city and growing city in the country, and it was. And
I thought that's what he meant at first, too.
That's what I thought, yeah.
I guess we need to look for a new police chief,
our police department does a great job, and for that we should be grateful. Okay, I'll conclude other business and move on to public recognition on non-agenda related items. If there's anyone that would like to speak to an item that's not on the agenda, you may do so at this time. Okay, seeing no one indicating that they wish to speak, I'll declare public recognition on non-agenda related items closed. Motion
To adjourn.
by
Yes.
Councilwoman Love, second by Councilman Carter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Happy birthday to our mayor.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, have a lovely evening, and be safe going home and be kind to one another. Thank you.